Okay. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Okay, so welcome along. Who got up earliest this morning? No, you didn't, Scott. 7:15? Anyone beat 7:15? Oh, really? Oh, crap, I can't complain, can I, really? So thank you very much for making the journey, and I genuinely appreciate it. Welcome along to the event. Thank you, Scott, for the first bit. That was really good. So today, this morning, before you all go out on your little photo walk or stay in with me and do the studio stuff, I get to talk to you about what I do and how I use the kits that you'll see dotted around the room today. So I'm going to give you a little sort of 20-30 minute or so demonstration of consistent colour in 3 easy steps. The key word for me is easy. I'll start with a little introduction, however. For those that don't know me, hello! That's pretty good, isn't it? My name's Gavin Hoey. I'm a full-time professional photographer and photographic educator. And photography happens to be my hobby as well as my job. So I spend a lot of time doing photography. I love it. I'm really lucky. I have a small studio. At the end of my garden is, well, my family called it the shed, but it is a studio. It is a large wooden building at the end of my garden. It's really tiny. I should be in retail photography or real estate photography because it's only 13 feet by 26 feet, but it looks huge in that picture. It's really good. So it's a really small space, and studio and location photography is what I tend to do. So what do I do in my studio? Well, I do everything really, anything and everything from the sort of simple and basic, classic sort of headshots through to things that are a little bit more stylized, a little bit different sort of background, through to things that are just downright dangerous that I can't do here today. That's a shame, isn't it? I know. It's disappointing. You might notice that was the same model 3 times. So today I'm really lucky that helping me out, I've got the awesome, amazing Meg Biffin. Where's Meg? There she is at the back. Hi, Meg.
Hi.
So Meg's my model. If you're not following her on Instagram, make that your job for today. Meg_Biffin. Absolutely wonderful makeup artist. Wonderful model. And quite a good photographer. You've got an A-level in photography, haven't you?
Maybe.
She's more qualified than I am. Which is kind of good. So go follow Meg. It's not just studio work I do location work as well. So this was in London, in a fantastic place called God's Own Junkyard. Anyone been there? Absolutely amazing place. Sadly, you can't go and photograph in there. They're very hot on that unless you're running a workshop, which is what we were doing here. We were using the Rotolight EOS as the light source in this crazy, crazy colourful place because I enjoy colour, I enjoy contrast, and this place had some absolutely freakiness. It was a wonderful place to go and shoot. That's Meg again. Honestly, I do work with other models. I really do. It's not just one. So other places I get to go. Recently I was in the UK's biggest tulip field. Didn't know there was such a thing, but I was in a massive field of tulips doing this sort of stuff, which was wonderful. And I go to other extremes. This was Tuesday's shoot. On Tuesday, I was in a chicken shed. Disused chicken shed. Yeah, I get to see the real highlight for me, don't I? So where Scott says he loves a bit of decay, yeah, I think as photographers we do. We enjoy things that are really run down and rustic. But I'm more often than not found in my studio, creating things that look like they're not in the studio. But whatever I'm doing, I'm always thinking about the colour in my photography. And I will always take a picture like this. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So my 3 steps are my monitor, my camera, and my editing. So I'm going to break those down a little bit just so you get a bit of an idea. Let's kick off with my monitor. My monitor is perhaps the most important thing of my entire workflow. Honestly, it's the thing I look at the most. So as a photographer, you might think you look through the camera the most. That's not really true. It's the screen. Nowadays, we spend more time looking at your computer screen than you do looking through the viewfinder of your camera. Kind of sad, I wish it was the other way around, but that's the reality of things. So my current monitor, the one I'm not going to get rid of for quite some time because I really love this monitor, is the BenQ 2700 PT. PT, it's the photographer version, there's also a video version. The box gave me a few statistics: 27-inch monitor, 2560 by 1440 resolution, and 99% Adobe RGB. That's what it says on the box. Some of those things are actually really useful, and other of them less useful than perhaps you might imagine. So my top 3 features. It's got a nice little SD card, stroke USB ports on the side. It gives me really even illumination, and it's not a 4K monitor, which may seem like a bad thing, but I'll explain. So USB, I'm getting old. I'm getting really old. So what I do for a living, I make YouTube videos for a living. That is my job. I'm technically a YouTuber. If I had to write a job description, that's what I would be. I am every teenager's dream job. Apparently, they did a survey, and a YouTuber stroke influencer is their dream job. I mean, there's nobody here under 20, so I think I don't want to shatter anyone's illusions. It's not good. It's really hard work. But for me, my computer is actually quite some distance from my desk for noise reasons. So having USB ports on the side of my monitor makes life an awful lot easier for me, because I can just plug stuff in without having to get up and down. And I'm getting old, so that's kind of nice. Even illumination was something I didn't realise was as important until I had it. So this is a photograph of my BenQ 2700 PT, where I've just put a black image on the screen and filled the screen. And it's reasonably evenly illuminated. Little bright bits in the corners, but other than that, it's pretty good. This is the monitor that it replaced. I've got 3 monitors on my desk. Every time I get a new monitor, I just shuffle one across to the side. And this one, hopefully it will show on this screen reasonably well. What's going on there? That's where all the heads of my subjects are. I didn't realise until I actually stopped and took a test shot and thought, yeah, maybe it is time to replace my monitor. So yeah, side by side, there is quite a difference in the smoothness of the illumination. That really does make a difference. It's not 4K. This is a really weird one. So when I was looking at getting a new monitor, I thought 4K was going to be the way to go. But I've had experience of high-res monitors and my workflow, and for me, I knew it was going to be more of a problem than a help. So, we need some numbers in here. Technical bit, 4K, 3840 by 2160 pixels. 1080p, which is probably what most people have as their monitor resolution, is 1/4 the size, 1920 at 1080. So you get more resolution with a 4K, which means you get finer detail, it all looks much better. The BenQ sits nicely between the two. Now 2700 PT sits nicely between the two of those, 2560, 1440. What does that actually mean in the real world? So this is my monitor. This is a screen grab from my monitor. This is how I see things. I sit 2.5 feet from my monitor. I measured it. And at the resolution with my BenQ monitor on a 27-inch monitor, I can easily click on all of the little buttons, no problem at all. The minute I switch to a 4K resolution, my screen would do that. Spot the difference? Front row people can probably still make out the buttons, the back row people would be struggling a little bit. Now I'm going to be fair to Adobe. This is how it used to be about 18 months ago, and then Adobe fixed their scaling. Now Adobe products scale beautifully, and that problem is no longer there. Whoopsie. That problem has been fixed. But what you're looking at is a PowerPoint presentation on PowerPoint 2002. What's that, 17 years old? Yeah, I bought it in 2002. It still works today. It doesn't scale. So a lot of the software I use is from stuff I have a legacy of software, so I use stuff that doesn't scale well. So at the moment, I find 4K isn't working for me. That is going to change. As time goes on, 4K is going to be more and more beneficial. If I was buying one today, bearing in mind I've had my BenQ for about a year, it would be a tougher choice between the two. So quick question, show of hands, how many of you calibrated your monitor this year? I'm being generous. Okay, that's fine. Pretty good. How many of you have got a calibrator and not calibrated this year? And just so I know, is there anybody who won't put their hand up no matter what I ask? No one. Awesome. That's good. Yeah, so I was a little bit like Scott and a little bit like a lot of you. Calibration was something I tried many years ago and it didn't really work for me, so I kind of didn't for quite some time. And then I realised I really should be, and it did make a difference to the consistency of my colours quite considerably. So nowadays I calibrate with the X-Rite i1. It is the perfect combination with the BenQ. They are designed to go together. They seem to partner very well. The people who calibrate, do you calibrate every day? I met somebody who once did. It's like, wow. I calibrate every now and again. There's no fixed timeline. I don't write it in my calendar. My workflow can be busy, 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 then quiet, and in the quiet patches I will run it through the calibration. The first calibration made a fair difference. It was enough for me to go, yeah, that was worth doing. After that, the calibration has been pretty much the same, but it does mean I'm getting a good consistency from my monitor. Which brings me on to why. Why do I bother calibrating? 2 reasons: predictable colors and the best quality. That's it. That's why I calibrate, for those 2 reasons. Predictable colors and the best quality. A couple of questions that came up in my head. My clients don't calibrate. Do you get this? Have you heard this before? My clients don't calibrate. Why should I bother calibrating when nobody that's looking at my pictures does? Here's a real world scenario. So this actually happened. So I did a one-to-one session, and during the session we did some gelled, coloured backgrounds, and it was kind of just a bit of fun, really. I had a client who saw this picture because I put it on my social media story, and messaged me and said, I need that yellow background for my next shoot. Like, okay, you need that yellow? Yep, it's got to be that exact yellow. That is what I need for my next shoot. He's a musician, he wanted an album cover, that was the yellow he wanted. Now, because I've calibrated through my system, I knew I could reproduce that yellow. There it is. If you're looking for high quality images, look at Scott's, because that's the real world. That is Iffy, the grime artist. Great name. He did an album called Pineapple Hair. That's his pineapple hair, apparently. And he wanted that yellow. Now, I've no idea what yellow he saw, but what I knew was I had to reproduce what he saw. So whatever yellow he saw, I can't help, but I know that if I produce the same yellow in my workflow, he'll see the same yellow in his. And that's the thing. So if you're a wedding photographer that is known for your big blue skies, you want them blue. You don't want them to be slightly cyan one week and then a little bit magenta the next week. You want that consistent. So you can't control what people see, but what you can control is that they see the same thing. That's why I calibrate. So, quick little room splitter. sRGB or Adobe RGB, which is best?
Depends on your application.
Damn you, yeah. Okay, yeah, I spent a long time agonising about this, and I keep reading articles, and I keep bumping from one to the other. I should definitely do Adobe RGB. Nah, maybe I should do sRGB. After years and years and years, I came to a conclusion that the best one for you to use is one of those 2. That's it. And it depends is exactly the right answer. It completely depends on what you're going to do. So for me, well, I actually use sRGB. That's my thing. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to ask because we'll have to learn somewhere. Colour space is what we're talking about. The amount of colour that we can see, not the number of colours. There's the same number of colours in each, but it's the space in which they're contained. So sRGB is a smaller space, Adobe RGB is a bigger space, and you'd think bigger is better. That's what I used to think. Not always true. So I make YouTube videos. Everything I do from that point of view goes on the internet. The internet is sRGB. My phone is an sRGB space. Almost everything I touch is sRGB. So for me, it makes total sense to work as much as possible in that space. For you, it could be completely different. So if Adobe RGB is right for you, that's the right space for you. Nobody can tell you definitively. They can suggest, and then you have to find your own path. And if you want really good advice, the guys behind you are the ones that really know. Not the front row people, not directly behind the front row people, I mean over there. So I use sRGB because that's the end result for most of my work. All right, that was step 1. Blimey, that went on a while. But it is important. Monitors and colour is absolutely critical. Step number 2 is my camera. Okay, so my camera. I do a fair bit of colour work before I get to my computer. I like to make my life a little bit easier. So Scott said you can knock out a wedding in 2 hours. But back when I did weddings, which was over a decade ago, I think I did my last one, Lightroom didn't exist, and the editing took over a week. and it was awful. Just a horrible experience. The first pictures were great, and by the end of the week, I couldn't care how I edited them. They were just like, don't look at the final pictures, look at the first ones, they were good. Things have got a lot better over the years, not least because colour control has become a lot easier. So I use the X-Rite Colour Checker Passport. I use it enough that it's often attached to my flash meter, which I couldn't live without. So I try and get things right in camera. And to do that, I'm talking about the white balance. So the white balance is pretty good on auto white balance. It gets it right the majority of the times, or at least close enough. But sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where the colours just don't look right. So my version 1, there's just been an update on the Colour Checker Passport, has a single grey swatch, and I'll use that to take a grey white balance in my camera. The thing that worries me about this picture is I told the model I was just photographing that little bit, and she did that. She had no idea I was photographing her face. Maybe I should work better with models and be more polite, I don't know. So that works really well. You could, if you don't have a Colour Checker Passport, your other option is to get a grey aircraft and shoot them next to a grey aircraft. That works. It's a bit challenging, but it's worth a try. So the reason I do it, it's probably not going to show on the screen because this one isn't calibrated and I'm looking at it at a weird angle. If I'm looking through my viewfinder, I'm seeing an okay colour. I use an Olympus camera for full disclosure. I'm an ambassador for Olympus cameras. And the electronic viewfinder shows you the white balance as you shoot, and it looks okay. But if I want to get it right, I can change my white balance. It's way off on that screen, but I can change my white balance so it looks better through the viewfinder. That makes me feel better as a photographer. But also when I stop and show the model the photos, they see them the right colour rather than the wrong colour, which makes them feel better and makes them think I know what I'm doing. Notice the word think. Okay, so, I should do it. Am I going to go? I've got where I'm in my PowerPoint. I've killed my PowerPoint. Boom. Oh, okay, right, so we're going to do this live. Let's do it absolutely live. So let's come out of that and jump in. So to do this live requires a couple of things to happen. The first thing is I need to set a camera up. And a very long cable, which is tucked underneath here. So I carefully straighten out the cable, it's already tangled up. Right, so live photography, great fun. Anyone ever tethered live in front of a group? Yeah, you haven't got too many grey hairs though, so you obviously went all right when you did it. Yeah. If anything's ever going to go wrong, this is the moment. So I enjoy this bit because it's kind of a bit scary. Right, okay, so let's set my camera up. Let's get a picture of you lot, first of all, just to see if this actually works. And, okay, right. Ooh, I can't get back very far. So, if you lot to look vaguely happy. Well done, vague. Yeah, that's vague. That's, okay, let's try this a bit happier. Give me a huge wave! Way! There you go. Marvellous. Well done. Thank you very much for coming. That's it. I can go. I've got the evidence I was here. It's great. So, colour. The colour of this is, well, whatever the colour just happens to be. So, to get my colours looking better, I'm going to use the Colour Checker Passport, which has various sides, depending on which version you've got. I've got the version 1, so I have the standard swatches, and on the reverse, I have the grey card. And that's what I'm going to use. Okay, what we need now is, I don't know, somebody to hold this for me. Who can I possibly pick on? Meg, well, we're actually paying Meg, so volunteers, quite nice. You're not American by chance? No. Weird thing. Done some demos in America, used to demoing in the UK. You ask for a volunteer, and suddenly the floor is really interesting in the UK. It's like, you ask for a volunteer, look at the floor, isn't that interesting? In America, I asked for a volunteer expecting the same thing, and everybody put their hand up. Amazing. Didn't know what to do. I was really confused. Meg, do you want to just hold that for me? Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay. So let's take a picture of Meg first of all, using whatever white balance I just happen to have set in the camera at the moment. Okay, here comes Meg. There we are. Look at that. That's what you're going to be working with later. Okay, so how do I get my white balance right? Well, it'll vary depending on camera to camera, but on my button I've got a little one-touch white balance button. So I just press and hold the one-touch white balance. I come and fill the screen with that and get it in focus. There we go. Boom. Okay, and then I set it with custom white balance, which it won't let me do because I'm tethered. I've forgotten about that. Hang on. I know. There we go. Let's come in here. And of course, because it's live, it still won't let me do it. So this is great. So this is why I was kind of surprised when okay, well, we'll do it the hard way then, if that's what you want me to do. There we go. Olympus cameras, wonderful things. There we are, we're in. Okay. Okay, so plug yourself back in, tether back up. So that's what it was like in the standard white balance, whatever I was set to previously. Here's my custom white balance. Bearing in mind this screen isn't calibrated, but now my screen looks a lot better. Okay, so yeah, it's a little bit blue, this screen, for my taste, but that's all right, we'll live with it. So colour-wise, I can get my colours right. And through my viewfinder now, everything looks the right colour. So I'm happy with the colours. That saved me a ton of editing. Because when you go back and do your editing, if you've got to white balance all of your images, especially if, like me, you work inside of a studio, that's a really slow, laborious process because you just don't want to do it. I mean, you can speed things up in Lightroom. It is now much quicker than it used to be. But anything you can do to save a bit of time is a good thing. Okay. Stay there, Meg. I'll be back with you in a second. So, number 3 is my editing. Speaking of editing. So, editing. I do editing on my pictures to a degree. I'm not a kind of get it absolutely right in camera, but I try and get it roughly right in camera as much as I can. So, this is this week's shoot in the abandoned chicken shed. And during the shoot, I took that picture. Am I that shocking? I don't know. Is it? It's like, honestly, I'm quite surprised. So I've got my reference chart. So even if I don't do the white balance all the way through, even if my white balance looks about right, I take a picture of the colour checker passport for 2 reasons. The first one is I can make a profile, which is really useful. The second reason is I can just do a white balance later. I do it even when I'm doing corporate headshots. There you go. Which is great because, again, you want to have consistency of colour through your workflow. So how does it work? Well, it works like this. There is a little profile. I use Photoshop, by the way. This is Camera Raw. There is a little profile option that allows me to choose a profile. By default, you get Adobe Standard, which is okay. But if I make my own profile, I can go to that. Okay, so difference is quite a bit. The difference is really obvious if you look in the lower right corner. Can you see the difference in the reds? All I've done is made my own custom profile. And if you look at the swatches on the passport, you'll see they all change as well. Okay, especially the blues. Big shift. Okay? So that's just getting the best out of my camera, lens, and lighting combination, just by taking a picture of that, making a profile. If I didn't do the white balance and I didn't make my profile, that would be what the camera did for me. Okay, so I can go from that to that without moving a slider, which is really good. So how does it work? Well, in Lightroom, it works slightly differently to Photoshop. I'm a Photoshop user rather than a Lightroom user. So in Lightroom, here is a pre-recorded way of doing it. And in Photoshop, I'll show you for real in a second. So first thing you need to do is to export your image with the Colour Checker Passport in it. And if you've loaded the X-Rite software, you will find there is a nice little preset. Follow the instructions, let it do its thing, and you will make a custom profile right there where it says Adobe Color, and that's my own profile. Again, spot the difference. And again, you should notice not only the oranges have really come up, but the blues have addressed the blues of the swatches. That's just making a color profile. It takes a couple of minutes, saves you a ton of time. It's really good if, like me, you're in a similar environment. If you're more dynamic, when Scott's out there, if you're spending a lot of time in one place, it's worth doing. It's still something I would do because I've got my white balance cards along the bottom. Right, okay. So let's do that live in Photoshop. By the way, how many of you are Lightroom users? Wow. How many of you are Photoshop users? You can be both. Okay, that's good news. So I'm a Photoshop user, and I use Photoshop all the time. That's what I do. I do have Lightroom, but because I don't really do weddings and I don't really do mass editing, I prefer the slower pace of Photoshop. Right, okay, so let's get a picture of Meg holding the card. Okie dokie. We should probably light you. Oh, we'll go, let's leave it, let's go with ambient light today. We're going to do flashes later. Right, so what I'm going to do is just take a picture of the colour checker passport in the light that you want to go through. Okay, so it's important that the light is the same. So if I was using flash, I would light Meg with flash and photograph the colour checker passport that way. If I'm using ambient light, I would use the ambient light. Okay, there we go, Meg. So I'll just take a picture of that. Thank you. There is an up and down on it. Call me OCD. Okay, make sure it's roughly in focus. I'm actually going to take one in focus today because I probably should. There we go. Okay, so that's all I need. That's literally it. Thank you, Meg. Good job. You can get home now. That's it. You're done. So what I need to do is go find that image. Here it is. I need to bring that image into Photoshop, and it'll open up as camera raw because it's a raw file. If you're doing this inside of Photoshop, wow, that's really interestingly large. Yeah, bear with me 1 second, and we'll just see if we can resize my screen so I can actually see something. Display settings. Has it jumped up to, ooh, interesting. Right, there we go. That's better. I can actually see all the buttons now. Okay, so all I need to do is turn this into a DNG file. Okay, so a DNG file. So I'm just going to go to Save Image. I'm going to save it as a DNG file. I'll save it to a folder. Let's just pop it on my desktop for now. That's absolutely fine. No object moniker. Huh, okay. Wonder what that means. Okay, well, we'll just save it wherever it wants to go then. That's all right. Okay, that's it. Saved. Done. Out of that. So then all I need to do is make a profile of that. Now, to make a profile, you launch... Oh, there's an update. No, I don't want to do an update. Now's not the best time to do an update, is it? Okay. You just launch the Colour Checker Passport, and it says drag and drop a DNG image here. No problem. Let's go find that DNG image. It's going to be that one. Drag it and drop it right onto that bit of software. There's the bit of software I want to drag it onto. That one. Drop it right there. Loading the image. Now this is the bit I hate. In the video they'll edit this so it looks really short. Gets there in the end. So what it's looking for is the little swatches, the panel of swatches, and it's found it. I literally have done it. I can click on Create Profile. I'll make a profile. We'll call it Meg1. And we'll save that as a profile. Boom, there you go. And then all I have to do is launch Photoshop, launch that same image again, and if I want to apply my profile, I come to the profiles at the top where it says Profile. I choose to browse the profiles, and I choose from My Profiles, which are down here. There it is, Meg1. So I can apply the profile. Can you see how it's changing the colours? Notice how much more blue is coming out of the blue swatch. How a red jacket just leaps up a little bit in colour. Okay, so I can apply the swatch there, and if I didn't do the custom white balance, or as I wiped it out, I can actually apply a white balance here as well, just like that. How many of you have got a Colour Checker Passport? Brilliant, okay. For those that have got the passport, that's not the only thing it does. There's one other little hidden gem. I don't know if you can see here, there's little pictures of faces along the top. The reason I got Meg to hold it the other way up so we can clearly see this. Okay, there we go. Little faces. So this is the portrait swatches for getting your white balance correct. There's one with a little bite out of it. That little bite is the one that is a neutral grey. If you're a landscape photographer, there's a little bite. That's the neutral one. If you want it warmer, you can use the ones with the plus. Bigger plus, more warm. Minuses as well if you want to go cold on your landscape. Did you notice that if you got one? That's what it's for. Okay, that's why I use that swatch right there if I want a nice neutral grey. So it's not just a one-trick pony. It really is rather good.
Gavin,
yeah.
If you're on a shoot and you take a custom profile, do you keep that forever related to that shoot, or?
Really good question. Okay, that is a superb question. So do I keep it forever? Depends. I don't keep them forever, partly because I'd end up with a screen full of profiles. But I shoot the majority of my stuff in the same studio with the same lights, with the same modifiers. So once I've made a profile for those, that's what I'm going to keep, because that's a consistent thing. If I found myself in the chicken shed, that is a new location where the colour could be all over the place, I'm going to make a new profile for that. So I will keep the profiles at places I will use often, and if it's a one-off thing, I will lose the profiles. You can save the profiles elsewhere, you can always put them away if you want to sort of have a library of profiles, it's entirely up to you, but I'm kind of keep it clean.
No, just like if a client wanted a print 2 years down the track and you didn't have the profile, would it be an issue?
If you saved it out, once you've saved it as a JPEG or whatever, it's going to embed that in, so you're okay. Oh. It's purely at the raw end of things in your raw processor. So personally, no, I keep just the ones I need. Any other questions at all? Awesome. Good. Okay. So let's come out of that and head back in here. There was one last little thing before we all have a little break and then head out or stay in. One little bonus thing. So my 3 steps, monitor, camera, and editing. The 4th step is really important and perhaps the most useful from today's point of view. Ask the experts. Okay, so you don't often get a chance to ask the real experts in photography and colour management and areas of photography their advice, but today that's exactly why you're here. We're not mind readers. We're really good and we're experienced, but we can't predict what you want to know. So if you want to know something, ask us. Whether it's about flash, whether it's about street photography, whether it's about printing and colour management and monitors and whatever it is, we've got somebody here to help. So please make use of today and ask us questions. So with that in mind, is there any questions? Thanks for coming. Easy, isn't it? Okay, so that brings me to the end of my little presentation. If you have got any questions, obviously, and you don't want to ask in front of a group, I understand that totally. Please come and have a chat. So we're going to have a little tea break. We're going to split you into 2 groups, and then we're going to hit the streets, stay here. Okay, thank you very much.